I'll call to order the August meeting of the Finance Committee. And I have a statement I need to read. All committee members are participating in person. Because a non-committee member, Councilmember Annette Scipio, is participating virtually, the North Carolina General Statute states this meeting is a virtual or remote meeting and is being streamed live. The committee members that are here today are myself, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, Mr. Jeff McIntosh, and Mr. James Taylor. And we do have the other three council members. Ms. Scipio is traveling right now on an airplane to Los Angeles. If she gets there in time, she's going to call us from the cab, I think, as she travels to the hotel. We'll see how things go when they get there. We have did not meet in the month of July, and therefore we have a very busy August schedule. It's been a long time since we had this many people in the room. We must be giving a lot of money away today. We'll see. Anyway, and by the way, I was going to recognize Mr. Paul Norby. Paul, where are you? There you are. Our former planning director for the city. I don't know if you've been in this room in a while. Very different. We all have our, it's kind of like, what was that game show that they set in the little cubes?
Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares.
Yeah,
I kind of
Hollywood
feel like
Square.
that sitting in these little squares. Anyway, we will begin as usual with the consent agenda. Mr. McIntosh, I have C21 that you want pulled. Anyone else? I would like to pull C4, C28, and C35. Anyone others?
Mr. Chair, I can't find the one that I'm looking at. I think it's about us selling some land over to the Art Space School.
Somebody give me, I think that's C35, isn't it?
No, that's Habitat.
Is it on general agenda, G7?
It might be on the, yeah, I think it is. Wait a minute.
It is, so it's already, it will be on
Okay,
general agenda.
thanks.
Okay. Anybody, can I get a motion to approve the balance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the balance. Now, how are we going to vote today?
You can
We're gonna do it on the
electronic
screen.
vote. Yes, sir.
For those who don't come to meetings regularly, it didn't work last time we tried this, but we'll try it today.
Yay.
That is approved. We will now go, and I will go in numerical order. We will start with C4.
C4, resolution authorizing proceeds from the previous sale of city-owned property to economic development infrastructure at Motor Road, Old Walkertown Road. Nope.
I wanted this one pulled. Mr. Rao, if you'll just give us a rundown of this. Part of this land I thought was sold off for a Dollar General store and
Yeah.
this, that, and other. Can you kind of give us a little history on what's going on here?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tempore Adams, members of the City Council. So kind of revisit the history on this. Back in August of 2013, Greater Tabernacle Worship Center purchased 20 acres of land there at Motor Road and Old Walkertown Road from the city for $200,000. At the time, their intent was to build a community center on that property, and the deed restrictions that we had in place required that the land be used for a public purpose, in this case, a multipurpose facility. Fast forward, they sold 1.5 acres of the 20 acres to Dollar General. So by reselling that at a market rate, that the church had to then to resell that portion or to provide a compensation to the city in order to release the restrictive covenants on those 1.5 acres to the city, which netted $285,000 at the time. Then subsequently, Greater Tabernacle had to satisfy their deed of trust with their primary lender, and the city worked with them to basically use the proceeds from when they sold or when they compensated the city for the 1.5 acres to use those funds to pay off the loan, and then the net amount from that paying off of the loan was placed in an escrow account that was to be used eventually for the development of the community center. Right now, that escrow account balance is about $109,000. Fast forward again down the road, the church was not able to develop the multipurpose center per the restrictive covenants, and thus the city went through a foreclosure action to regain control of those, of the remaining acreage there, the 18.5 acres of land. And so this particular item is really somewhat of a house cleaning item in the standpoint that we are looking to you all to release the funds that are being held in escrow, and we now are recommending they would be used to reinvest in the future development of the 31 acres that the city now has in control up there at Motor Road and Old Walkertown Road. And there will be a subsequent action that you'll be hearing on the general agenda related to this item.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed.
Yes, sir.
Bear with me a minute. I think we do need a motion to approve this one.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of C4.
Hang on a minute.
Second.
Is there a motion and a second? If everyone will please vote, committee members, please vote. That
Mr.
is
Chair.
approved. The next one is C20. Oh,
I was just going to make a point of
yes, ma'am.
clarification, if I may. It was actually a declaratory judgment action that the city was placed back in possession of the property. Just a technical correction, but we are back in possession.
Okay, I'm not sure what that is, but that's what we really did.
That's just
Okay.
for the record.
All right, keep all your attorneys happy. All right, C21, if Secretary, please read this one.
C21, resolution awarding annual blanket purchase orders for sole source information systems and technology vendors.
Thank you. Ms. McIntosh?
Tom, I don't have a specific question for you on this. It's just my typical displeasure in having no bid contracts. And just, I want to pass on my desire to keep that list and those dollars spent that way as low as possible.
Understood. Let me start. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, members of committee and council, Tom Karuska, CIO and IT department. I will mention that every item on the list was at one point selected through either an RFP, request for proposal, or request for bid. These are annual renewals. And then so happens everything listed here, it's either a proprietary, the vendor has no partners, or they have a selected partner they assign to their geographical territories. But I certainly understand the bids, and these all have gone through at some point a bidding process.
Again, I know you're aware that council feels that way in general, but I just
Sir.
like to remind you of that every time.
I understand.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Any more questions?
I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to approve C21. If everyone will please vote. That is approved. Thank you. We will now go to C28.
C28, consideration of items relating to an agreement with Strategics Consulting.
I asked for this one to be removed. I just wanted some edification on how we're going to compensate the folks. And I say, first off, I think this is an excellent idea. This is our lobbyist in Washington. She is very good at it. Her firm is very good at it. And I would think would be very good at writing the grant request. But just curious how we're going to decide, because I'm assuming she will do a number of them.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. This is would be a contract not to exceed $100,000. So as those grant opportunities come forward for BIL, we would work with Leslie Mozingo of Strategic Consulting on the amount that was necessary for whatever that specific grant is. In the case that you see in the CARF, she identified a grant writing consultant to help us with a bridge project, a bridge planning project already. That was a not to exceed $15,000 amount. So they'll be negotiated individually based on the grant itself and the amount of time taken to write the grant.
Okay, and then once we hit the 100, we may need to replenish the bucket at some
We
point.
would have to come back to City
Okay,
Council.
Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I would love to see us like insurance companies. We don't have to pay until we get paid. But I know that might not be possible, but as to Chairman Clark, my concern will be, just like the CARF read, that when the money is expended, then we have to consider council whether we want to re-up and keep paying third-party, second-party consultants to write the grants. As he said, I do know that Strategic Consulting has done a great job for the city of Winston-Salem. I like to call them federal advocates versus lobbyists, Chair Clark. But somehow or another, you're going to have to work with us on that, because if we use up all the money, like you said, with all of these new grants getting ready to come down the pike, and we're not able to get anything, then we got to somehow figure out how is that a win-win for us when we might as well have somebody in-house or somebody locally to write the grants. But I look for you to help us with that, and I know you will.
Thank you. Mr. McIntosh.
Can we get a scorecard or a dashboard on a relatively frequent basis just to see if we're spending $100,000 and we're getting millions in return?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a deal we should pursue.
Absolutely. At the end of the $100,000, we'll bring you that back, but what you'll see is each one of the grants that we write, we'll let you know whether or not we receive it and how much it was for on an individual basis.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Not, do we have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve C28. If everybody please vote when it comes up. And that is approved. Thank y'all very much. The last item that was pulled was C35.
C35, resolution authorizing financial assistance to Habitat for Humanity of Forsyth County for infrastructure in the Stone Terrace development.
Two questions here. One, I know at the time they were expecting a county match or in the same dollar range approximately that we were. And secondly, what pool are we pulling this from? And as we all know, the Choice Neighborhoods is putting that's another housing project, is putting tremendous stress on our budget in that area. Could you comment on those 2 points?
Yes, sir, Chairman Clark. The way that this CARFN resolution is written is for the city to provide up to $400,000 and for the county to match that at up to $400,000 for a project not to exceed $800,000 with Habitat. Anything over the $800,000 threshold would be the sole responsibility of Habitat for Humanity to cover the difference. In terms of the pot of funding, the current resolution is written up to use what I'm going to call ARPA funding from general fund balance, that fund money that we used through the revenue loss calculation.
Yep.
You are referring to an email, I believe, from the city manager where the county may propose a different funding source. The way that it is currently written, though, is to use, for the city to use ARPA funding.
Concerning the alternate funding, there is a pot out there that has the revenue that we get from selling water outside the county, I believe it is.
Yes, sir,
There
there
are a
is a
few
pot.
communities. Now, there aren't many communities, but I think that we still sell some water. Can the county use that fund without our permission, or does it take both parties?
It takes both parties' permission in order to use that fund. The fund currently has a little over $3.6 million in it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Tash and the Habitat Humanity staff that are here, thank you so much for what you've been doing over the past decades throughout the city of Winston-Salem. These are the types of partnerships now, as I've discussed or the council talks about all the time, along with our community development staff and housing, is that the city can no longer, we can't do housing by ourselves. You know, we may be able to put some money and partner with somebody and collaborate, and that's how we're going to have to get it done if we're going to do anything to provide housing for people that need it the most. I think it's a good plan, an initiative and partnership. All you have to do is not look far in your wards, like in the North Ward. We have lots of Habitat homes. On the south side, we have lots of Habitat homes. On the east side, we have lots of Habitat homes. And on the northeast side, this is where this is, off of Ogden Station Road up in that area. So if it means that we have to partner with people that have the expertise, the track record, and they get it done. They raise money, they get it done. And those are the types of folks we're looking for to try to put a dent in this housing shortage in the city. So Director Red and all of you and Mr. Calley, thank you all so much for what you do.
Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, Mr. Tesh. I think this is a good project. I just want to commend Habitat for stepping up to do the work. And I also want to commend the leadership of Mr. Red, who is a local gentleman leading the organization. Thank you for your leadership, sir, and we're looking forward to partnering with you on the project.
I also want to say thank you for the presentation and the information, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Red from Habitat and Mr. Mentor as well. Of course, this is something that I support 1,000%. It is in the Northeast Ward, and I've been to so many house dedications there, and I'm looking forward to this community fully developing with the 75 single-family homes that are projected to be built there. So I appreciate the support that we're giving Habitat, and I appreciate what Habitat has been doing for the city of Winston-Salem all along. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to bring it to attention that this falls well within our wheelhouse of what we want to use as far as subsidies on a per unit basis. And I think that's something that we need to keep our focus on. This is right in that wheelhouse, so it's something I'm really happy to support.
Can I get a motion?
Move for approval.
Second. One more comment,
Oh, wait.
Mr. Chair.
Let me make one
Okay.
first. There is this issue that the county has brought up about using a different pot of money. The resolution in front of us does not address that. It says we're going to take it out of the ARPA. If and when the county wants to change, or if they want to change, we will deal with it at that point. But what we're doing is passing a resolution which we think makes sense for the city.
Agreed.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Clark, it would have to come back for a budget amendment anyway, as there's not one currently tied to it. We would do that after the county approved. So if they were to propose that alternative funding mechanism, it would already be coming back to you after their recommendation or approval anyway.
But I'm not going to second guess what the county's going to do until they do something. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a motion and a second, I believe, on the floor. If everybody please vote. Thank you very much. That is approved. That's all the consent I have. We will now move to the general agenda. Let me comment, first off, the city manager is not here today because he is under the weather. Hopefully he'll be better tomorrow. The mayor is not here. He had a conflicting meeting that was supposed to be over around 4:30 to 5 o'clock, and he's going to try to make it, but they are not here for good reasons. So we will move forward anyway. If the city secretary please read G1.
G1, consideration of items related to the construction of Winston-Salem administration offices as part of the Truist Stadium MLB upgrades project.
Mr. Ralph, you present this, and please remind everybody of why we're looking at stadium improvements to begin with, and then what's the addition that's being requested.
Yes, sir. Chairman Clark. So back in June, city staff briefed the city council, actually presented an item for you to award a design contract to make upgrades to Truist Stadium to comply with new Major League Baseball facility standards. So a little over a year ago, Major League Baseball decided to basically take control of all of professional baseball. They went through a contraction. I think over 40 teams were eliminated as part of that contraction, but then for those teams remaining, they've done assessments of their facilities through using a scoring system, and based on that, we developed a scope of work to comply with those new Major League Baseball standards. And so the item that was before you in June was to award the design contract with Walter Robbs, Callahan, and Pierce Architects for that scope of work. About that time, Winston-Salem ownership approached city management about adding to the scope of the project and adding to that the construction of new administration offices. They're going to be having to relocate from their current site. And so at the time, the timing just didn't quite work out. So subsequently, staff has worked with the architect and has negotiated a fee to add the construction of the administration offices to the scope of the design contract. But also as part of that arrangement, the team has agreed that they would pay for the full cost of the construction of those offices, the design, the construction, the financing costs that we would incur. based on the actual cost to build. So there are two resolutions in this item. One is to approve a new lease agreement with Winston-Salem LLC for them to pay for the full cost of constructing the administration offices. We would determine the actual schedule of lease payments when we know the actual cost of constructing the offices, and we issue the limited obligation bonds to help pay for that construction. And then the second resolution is to approve a change order with Walter Robbs, Callahan, and Pierce to add the construction of the administration offices to the scope for the design contract. But I do want to emphasize that as far as the funding of the construction of the administration offices, that the team would be paying the full cost of the actual cost of constructing those offices, that the $5 million that you approved as part of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget would not be applied towards the construction of these offices. Our intent is for that full $5 million to fund the required upgrades that we have to make to meet the new MLB facility standards. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Will this be a different lease than the basic stadium lease?
Right now, we're envisioning it as a separate lease.
I would like it as a separate lease.
A separate
Two
lease,
different
and we'll actually add a specific schedule. You don't see that, in the exhibit to this item, because obviously we don't know what the actual cost will be. So it'll be kind of an after the fact when we know how much was the actual design, the construction, et cetera.
And this will go right down the first base line above.
So the main focus of the project will be on making the visiting team clubhouse basically mirror the home clubhouse. Those were the most, what you want to call, penalty points assigned to the assessment was for the visiting clubhouse. But in addition to that, we will have to construct 2 enclosed batting facilities, increase the size of the right field wall, make the stadium totally Wi-Fi. So those are the other improvements that we will be looking to make.
Thank you. But the building they're talking about will go on the concourse level down the first base line.
I'm sorry, that's correct. It'll be, yes, that's right, that walkway that you see along the first
Just to
base.
reiterate something Mr. Ralph said, baseball has had a significant change here that hasn't really made a lot of the news, but the Major League has taken over more day-to-day hands-on to their minor league. They eliminated a number of cities lost their teams, and we were very fortunate to retain ours. I think for the most part we have an excellent stadium, which they really enjoy. And now they're going to, their offices are currently over on Burke Street, somewhere over that way.
Correct.
And now they want to move them on site. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Mr. Rao, again, this is for just professional architectural services, design, and that sort of thing, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in the consent agenda, we approved upgrades to the HVAC. Am I wrong? Consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. So there was a budget amendment to appropriate money for the replacement of HVAC units that service the flow club level. Those units, the old ones were that, and we just reached a point where we had to invest in brand new units to make sure that that level was properly serviced.
And the stadium is what, 13 years?
I think it's a little over 10 years old.
10 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
And we're replacing, I'd hate for that to be at my house. The replacement of the HVAC to those offices, the suites that we voted on in the consent agenda. Do we have a concern that we may find out when they start the design process that we may have to, we find some other things like we found before? Councilman Clark, every time we go in digging, we find something different at this stadium. So I'm just asking, Mr. Rye, I know you can't tell me, but do you think we're going to come up with any surprises?
I don't believe so, because the focus of this is going to be on the Major League Baseball upgrades. This is one where, as far as the HVAC units are concerned, where I think we all agreed, both city and team staff, that we were probably on borrowed time. My understanding is that it might not have been designed to properly service that space to begin with, and now we feel like that the investment we're making in these 2 units will satisfy that need.
Is there a possibility that you could prepare, not anytime soon, but I know you guys are swamped, report to council on the health of the baseball stadium, of like we have with public safety and others, or IT, that we see there's a longevity of the asset, and then you tell us that the normal is blah, and this is what we have. I think that would be good for me. I don't know about council, but I'm willing to share it. I'd like to see a report card on the health and condition of our stadium as of this month. So going forward, we will have a clue as to, are we seeing even now any minor repairs that, that are escalating, that they're always coming back, whether it's plumbing, whether it's air, whether it's electrical. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh.
So on this current deal that we're working on, and this part is in addition to it, we are basically acting as the bank. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Where are the funds coming from? They're coming from GEO?
So what we'll do, the $5 million will be funded through the issuance of limited obligation bonds.
Okay.
I think our plan was we'll just increase that issuance, but that interest cost on that will be paid for by the team.
Okay, that was my second question, was the cost of the funds to us will at least be covered by what we're charging them?
Yes, when we think of actual cost, it's not just the actual project cost, but also the financing cost.
Got it. Thank you.
Sir.
Can I get a motion on this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion, second to approve. We'll be on G1.
Yes.
G1. Everybody please vote when it comes up. That is approved. Thank y'all very much. We will now go to G2.
G2, consideration of items relating to funding for a multi-year housing plan.
Ms. Newman, you have the floor. If you'll please introduce this to us.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee, members of the council.
Good afternoon.
Marla Newman, Community Development Director. I am before you on behalf of the Affordable Housing Coalition, and we have with us two members of the coalition this afternoon, Mr. Paul Norby and Mr. Joe Crocker, who will also be happy to share comments after I've introduced the item. Part of the work of the Affordable Housing Coalition, which of course is an official board that was established by the council, was to look at the universe of our affordable housing and understand what our needs are and what the strategies would be to address those various needs throughout the city. As part of their undertaking, they have expressed an interest in receiving technical assistance from an organization, a nonprofit organization, to help them walk through the actual plan development. So how do we go about creating a multi-year housing plan that addresses the number of units that are to be produced per year, the number of units that we would target to be preserved per year, and how we best go about that in a collaborative way, such that it's not just the city that bears the responsibility for meeting the needs of housing for this community, but that it's a shared responsibility with the city, potentially our business partners, philanthropy, community organizations, and even a role for residents, so that even the community has a voice. The technical assistance provider that the Affordable Housing Coalition has been in conversation with, as you'll see in the council action item, is known as the Louisiana Homebuyer Education Collaborative, Inc., but their doing business name is Housing NOLA. Housing NOLA has been to Winston on a couple of occasions, met with the coalition, and has also done so virtually. As part of their work in New Orleans, which is where Housing NOLA is based, they also walked that city through a community-led, community-engaged process to create a 10-year plan in New Orleans. As part of that plan, every year there is a report card issued for all of the partners who have a role and responsibility, which means that even the city gets scored on its activities and whether it met the mark to do that work that all of the parties agreed to at plan creation. We have with us today Ms. Andronica Morris, who is the Executive Director of Housing NOLA, and so she is also here to answer questions about this particular proposal. If you'll recall, we came to you in June with this as an information item that outlined two proposals or two options for the technical assistance that could be provided. The first option provided for 12 months of services to the coalition to work with community to develop the actual housing strategy. The second option was an 18-month option, and with that particular option, the difference is it spends more time with community engagement, and it also has a facet that looks at building community capacity to actually implement whatever the final strategies are that community decides that it wants. And so they, again, Mr. Norby, as well as Mr. Crocker, are here to offer some words. And again, Ms. Morris is also here to answer questions about any of the technical aspects of the proposal. And I'll pause at this moment to see if I can answer any questions for you before possibly yielding the floor to the coalition members or Ms. Morris.
Let me mention also, this is on the agenda for general government tomorrow as well, just for everybody's information. Questions or comments? Ms. Adams.
First of all, Ms. Newman, thank you for everything that you've been doing to help us get to the next level. And the folks that are here today, thank you so much for volunteering, and we thank you for your public service. We know how much you volunteer in this city. I've tried to help persuade the council that we need this. I've been on the General Government Community Development Committee since I got in office in 2009, and housing has always been at the top of my list as well as the council. But we took it a step further by our strategic visioning and mission retreat. We made that part of what we believe in, a resolution or whatever, that housing is our primary focus. Like so many cities in the country, right now we have a shortage of staff. There's a shortage all over the country of staff that do this type work in actual cities. And when it came to us in June, as you know, this was part of everyone's home and grounded solutions and all of the things that we've been to over the past 3 or 4 years. This is a culmination to get the Winston-Salem City Council to a point, because we don't have a go-to person or persons that can work on this. And this group will do that for us and present us with a strategy, along with a council or committee that we appoint, the Housing Coalition. So I'm excited about this. I think one of the questions that everybody might have again is, well, where does the money come from? We have money sitting aside. I know choice is our first priority in housing. But I also know, like I've said before, and you've heard me say this, and Councilmember Clark in many meetings, and the mayor, we can't just focus on choice. That's our priority. But we still have a city in need and distress for housing. So this gives us an opportunity to collaborate with Habitat, collaborate with the coalition, collaborate with developers, collaborate with businesses, nonprofits, government, and the citizens, because it's going to take all of us to do this. So I support this resolution, and I think we need to go ahead and do this so that some of the council can clear their mind and know that we got somebody working on it and burning the midnight oil. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh.
$300,000 is a lot of money, but this is an expensive arena to operate in. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at that level of funding necessary to bring a group in that has chops. What I do worry about is my perception that we suffer from analysis paralysis. Mm-hmm. This is our third major study. And if this $300,000 will get more units built that we can hand keys over to people in a shorter period of time and maybe take some of the politics out of it, I will be its biggest fan. But I'd really like to hear from our esteemed associates out there about how that process will work and what this study will do to actually get things moving.
And if I could just clarify before they come forward, two things in terms of source of funding. When we did the For Everyone Home initiative, there was a line item in the bond budget, and this would be part of that, come from that line item, because it was, like Mayor Pro Tem said, this is a culmination of the work that was started a few years ago. And as far as what the deliverables are for this, this is in fact an implementation strategy rather than a housing plan or study in that regard. It's called a plan, but it's really an implementation strategy. How do we go about utilizing the ARPA dollars, any private investments, you know, to the extent that we've had conversations informally about do we look at some more bond dollars at some point. You know, this is the strategy about how do we go about bringing funders to the table, getting those units delivered that we all desperately need. That is the outcome. And I know Ms. Morris can also speak about how it has worked for them in Louisiana. But first, if you like, I can ask first Mr. Norby and then Mr. Crocker to come to the podium and share their thoughts. They did express that the desire was for the option 2, the 18-month option, because it does build that community capacity to actually lead the charge. So this would not be led by city staff. It would be led by an entity outside of City Hall. That's why we'll have to be accountable as well. And so it's necessary to build that community capacity to do this level of work. So I'll yield to Mr. Norby.
Ms. Newman, I'd like to make a comment before they come up.
Sure.
How many housing studies does it take to build an apartment? I'm counting this is the 4th study, not the 3rd. And if we approve $322,000, we're approaching $1 million we spent on housing studies. Now, let me talk about the real world a minute. You presented us the choice neighborhoods that we paid someone a lot of money to get that from Washington. It's a very comprehensive program. We're going to rebuild basically. Oh, by the way, Mississippi has just joined us. We see you. I hope you see us. Anyway, I voted for that program. We have just learned recently, due to inflation and other items, that we have a $46 million funding gap. It will take everything this city has for the next 4 or 5 years to do that one project if we can't crack that nut with some other solution. That's what when we mean when we say choice neighborhoods, that's where we are. And I'm not going to vote for any more studies until we get that nut cracked. Because right now we can't build anything else. And we have committed to building these units, and we have a $46 million hole. We're actually meeting this time next week. There's an ad hoc committee, Ms. Adams and I are on it, to try to find solutions to it. But I think it is a total waste of money to put together some plan that we do not have any money. We're going to commit money years down the road to fill this gap if something major doesn't happen, and that major that's going to happen is the federal government's going to have to come in with more money. And that's one of the things we're meeting on tomorrow. But I agree with Mr. McIntosh. I think there's a paralysis of analysis here. We just committed $400,000 to a habitat program that's coming out of this same pot. And I will tell you, there are 8 wards represented on this council, and choice neighborhoods is basically 1.5. I think Ms. Scipio gets it, most of it's in Ms. Burke's. But there are a lot of current ideas on the books that people would like to do. But guys, until we can solve this huge budget gap, why are we committing to anything else? So those are my comments. And now Mr. Norby and Mr. Crocker would like to come up, or whoever you would like. I know them both. They're good men. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. It's good to see you all. It's been a while.
Good to see you.
But let me try to begin to answer your concern, Councilmember Clark. what this is about is not just doing a plan, it's about doing an implementation and a strategy that unlocks financing that we could get that we don't tap into now, but having a plan in front of us and put together that integrates all of these different aspects is what many of these funding sources require you to have in order to unlock that funding. And Ms. Morris can talk about that some more there, but I wanted to talk to you about the importance of capacity building. I mean, as you mentioned, there have been plans. This plan really incorporates an implementation strategy, which is not just a plan, it's how are you going to get there with the plan. But just a reminder that the mayor has set an ambitious goal of 15,000 units of affordable housing that we need in this city. And to achieve that, you have to have a plan and an implementation strategy and a financing strategy and all that will unlock all those sources of funding. We presently have some public sector capacity with what community development does and in terms of code enforcement, housing rehab, providing financing assistance for new housing. Your strategic plan for 2022-25 includes a goal of issuing RFPs for 800 units of affordable housing, so that's a good start. As you mentioned, the Housing Authority is looking to bring in over 400 units over the next 6 years to redevelop the Cleveland Avenue area, which you all are working on with them. We also have some nonprofits or CDCs involved in creating affordable housing. Habitat, which, by the way, George Redd is also on the Affordable Housing Coalition, and so he's here not only representing Habitat but the coalition. They've been successfully creating affordable housing and home ownership at a rate on the average of about a couple dozen a year. Goaler CDC has partnered with private developers to create 200 or more units of mixed income housing over the last 15 or so years in its area of focus adjacent to the Innovation Corridor. And SG Atkins CDC has helped produce a couple of dozen affordable homes over the years in its area of focus in East Winston. There are a number of other organizations that are interested in or wanting to produce affordable housing. But even with all these very good efforts, it really is a drop in the bucket compared to our need for 15,000 affordable housing. If you put it all together, it really does not get substantially there to do whether the 15,000 goal is a 8-year goal, a 10-year goal, or a 20-year goal. It needs to be a lot more than what we're producing now. So this points to the need to build up our local capacity to achieve those needs. And building the capacity of nonprofits and CDCs to produce and partner with other developers on a wide range of affordable housing types is critical. Housing NOLA brings that expertise in capacity building. They had to develop that expertise, as you know, in a big way to address the huge rebuilding challenge that New Orleans experienced. And their capabilities have been recognized in other cities that have huge affordable housing needs like Nashville. So that's why the coalition recommends full funding for option 2, so we can go beyond the plan, have an implementation strategy, but also develop that local capacity that we can actually produce what we say that we want to produce. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Joe Crocker.
Oh, Paul, did you give your name and address?
Yes,
I'm
sorry. Paul Norby, 712 Mitch Drive, Winston-Salem, 27104.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Crocker, if you will give your name and address, I forgot to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Joe Crocker. I live at 3600 Cherry Laurel Court in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm part of Councilman McIntosh's ward. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, I didn't come with anything prepared to say as Mr. Norby did. I am a member of the coalition. I've been in this community now since 1997, and affordable housing has always been an issue that's become before not just the council, but in this community, nonprofit organizations, philanthropy, and we've not really developed any kind of cohesive plan in order to address affordable housing. We've gone about it haphazardly with, one-offs, as I would call them. But I think we have an opportunity now to really do something great and cohesive and collaborative to produce a housing plan. And I've heard the term study used a couple times. This is not a housing study. We're done with studies. This is time to put implementation plans into process that will actually help guide the work that gets done. This will help developers, and this will help other housing providers to figure out where they play in this schism of providing affordable housing, which is we sorely need. Until we crack this nut, as you say, Chairman Clark, we won't be succeeding in doing any kind of economic development or any kind of successful migration of people to this community because they won't have any place to live. Housing NOLA is a great consultant for us to use to build our capacity. We don't have the city staff. We don't have the lay staff. We don't have lay leadership that can lead a housing program that really attains the kind of results that we're going to have with this, in my estimation. And one of the best things about this capacity building proposal is that it involves the community. It gets community citizens and residents involved in planning, and we're not just throwing something on them. We are actually asking them for their input, their needs, and what needs to happen for them to become, if not homeowners, home renters, and to make sure that we have capacity and we have stock for them to be able to live in, if you would, and that's decent and affordable. So I think this is an opportunity for the city to do something really progressive and huge for affordable housing, and I really hope that we will move forward with approving the housing NOLA proposal that's before us. It is not a waste of money. As a matter of fact, $322,000. I know Councilman McIntosh, you talked about how much money, quote, that is, but for the long-term impact that this is scheduled to have for our city, I don't think that we can use the money any better than what we're getting ready to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crocker. Ms. Newman, I do want two questions. One is, I thought in the budget for this year, we had 2 new positions for housing folks, directors. That's maybe not the right title.
2 positions are a housing development manager to kind of lead the development side for the city in terms of issuing requests for proposals, managing actual deals that the city will sponsor. And then the second position was an assistant director to cover housing, so to kind of be a right-hand person with me and the housing development manager as we take on overseeing the actual sponsorship and development of projects around town, and helping with certainly managing ARPA funding that will support some of this development.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Are there specific questions for Ms. Morris? And I can certainly invite her to the podium if there are any technical questions about the proposal. Yes, ma'am.
Not necessarily technical questions, but I would hope that you'll give us your 2-minute elevator speech of trying to convince this group that we need you.
Certainly.
You got 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible. And I heard the concerns, and
Could you
these
give
are not.
your name and address,
I'm so
please?
sorry. I apologize.
That's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andronika Morris. I'm Executive Director of Housing NOLA. My address is 4713 South Carrollton Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70119.
Thank you.
And so this is, it is a significant amount of money for a consultant. And while when you do the math on this kind of work, you could get maybe 2 houses out of it, you are looking for 15,000 houses, 15,000 homes. And you're also prioritizing a choice neighborhood investment where you're concerned about where the resources are going to come from. That is what we are going to help this community work on and develop and identify. One thing that distinguishes this from anything that you've done before, number one, as you heard, this is not simply a study process. It is the development of an implementation strategy that is very unique, and it will set you up to secure other funding, namely some of the funding that just got passed this weekend in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's going to be billions of dollars being made available to help make homes energy efficient as addressing climate change, but it also addresses affordability. Those dollars, much like the inflation, the IIJA bill also require an equity strategy. So while Winston-Salem is going to receive the formula grants like you've done for ARPA, and you're going to get formula grants for IJA, and you're going to get formula grants for IRA, the competitive funds, the funds that will let you close the gaps on these projects, are going to require an equitable strategy, a community-rooted strategy that has data. That is what we're setting you all up for. This was not capricious. Ms. Newman knows our work very well. She knows that that's what we've been doing, and that's why she introduced us to the committee so we could help Winston-Salem get ahead of the curve, so that when those dollars come out, you all will be ready to do that, and you can say, no, we've spoken to our community. This is their needs, and you are well positioned to compete for those grants. We're doing this in Nashville. We're doing it in New Orleans. We'd like to help Winston-Salem do the same.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Mundy had a comment.
It's a comment and a question. I'm glad to hear this program. I don't get to vote on this, but I will give my 2 cents. It sounds like something that we do need. And as I see folks out there whose main priority in this community is building more houses shaking their head, that gives me confidence that this is where we need to go. But I want clarification on 2 things. One is we've talked about using ARPA money on this and some other programs that we're working on. Are we worried at all about the deadline, or has that been part of the moving target? Because it seems like our deadline was 2024.
So let me distinguish. So to cover the cost of the consultants, that is bond money. So it's not ARPA money. ARPA money will inevitably be a part of this, but it is not what we expect to be the primary source of funds for what may come out of the plan, since if council approves, we're talking about an 18-month process to develop that implementation strategy. In the meantime, the city will be sponsoring its own developments. As you recall, last fall, council approved the purchase of land between Sides Road and Peters Creek Parkway. We've talked about the permanent supportive housing on Northwest Boulevard. So there are already opportunities for the city to invest some of the ARPA dollars in projects on city-owned land already. So they are not necessarily joined at the hip.
And is that 2024 deadline still something that we have to hit?
That we have to allocate, yes.
It's allocate,
Yes,
but not spent.
Mr. Tesh, can you come up, and he's our ARPA expert, if you don't mind, Ms. Newman. Can you give a second opinion on the
Councilmember Clark.
timetable?
Sure. If you'll remember, we took a substantial amount of that ARPA money and moved it through our revenue loss calculations, and then in a subsequent month brought $20 million of that back and set it aside for housing production. So for that $20 million in ARPA CLFRF, so our direct distribution from the federal government, we have removed the timeline restrictions on that money. It does still exist, however, for the additional $10 million that the state gave us, which is from their ARPA pot, and it does have to be obligated by 24 and spent by 26.
Thank you for that clarification.
And how much is in that bucket that has to be allocated by 24 and spent by 26?
$10 million.
$10 million, okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
The other clarification is, I thought our total deficit of housing was 15,000 units, which was a combination of affordable and market rate housing, just a total deficit. But I'm hearing that 15,000 is specifically for affordable units. Is that correct? Can anybody answer that question?
Total.
Yes. The deficit is for affordable units. We're doing fairly well in the market with market units, but the big gap and the trouble that we're seeing with pressures on families' budgets and households is with the affordable units.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So just, if we could add 15,000 affordable units, we would be at market equilibrium across the board in most price ranges, where we really are feeling the crunches at the low end.
That would be the goal.
Right. Now, and to go to the timing on the expenditure money, that even the 10 million, my concept is that this group has to think way beyond that $10 million.
Absolutely.
And that $10 million can be spent even before that 18-month period if the right opportunities come along.
Absolutely.
So if we see home runs coming and they fall within our range of $25,000 units-ish from the city to fund them, I want to be able to pull the trigger on those deals.
Absolutely. Well, we must.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Newman, the current budget for the choice neighborhoods is 160, 70 million, something like that?
I'd have to.
Is that the latest number?
Yes.
Close enough?
Close enough.
Okay. We're tearing down units and building new ones. Is there a net increase?
Not in terms of affordable, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I want everybody to understand, we're going to spend 170 million to replace old units with newer units, but there's no net increase in the number of units.
Affordable.
No, we're tearing down
federal
the same
definition
number
of
we're putting up.
affordable. The federal definition of affordable, no.
We're tearing down the same number we're
Workforce.
putting up. There's no net increase in the number of apartment units. So anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Newman, please explain again the last paragraph on page 2 of the action request form of the money, again, in 2018, which was 4 years ago, going on almost 5, when the resolution of the $322,000 from the 2018 general obligation bonds.
Yes, ma'am. So when we created the budget that council approved in terms of utilizing the $10 million that were voted on by the taxpayers in 2018, there was a line item that was listed as For Everyone Home. And that contained both the match that we used as part of our participation. If you'll recall, we were one of 3 cities in the country that were awarded the participation in the pilot. It was a competitive application, and it came with a $75,000 match. The grant was $325,000 from the Ford Foundation on that. And then we left a line item there, knowing that coming out of that process, there would be action items that we would need to execute on. And so that is why that particular line item with For Everyone Home is the designated one to cover the cost of this plan, because that was envisioned when the whole budget was created, so that we could then have a way to implement whatever came out of the For Everyone Home pilot.
Thank you.
I promised we'd be finished by 6, and we have 2 or 3 other very critical items. This will be discussed tomorrow in community government. Do I have a motion or a comment at this point?
I move for approval of G2.
Second.
We have a motion second for G2. If everybody please vote when it comes up. Thank you. That is 2 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstaining. Thank you. We will now move, and I have just lost my place.
G3, consideration of items
G3,
relating to the
please.
Choice Neighborhoods Initiative.
Wait a minute. Excuse me, just bear with me. My computer just hiccuped. Who would like to present? I guess this is here. The Choice Neighborhoods is a 5 or 6 section program.
6 years. The development is a 5-phase development.
5 phase. We're talking about phase 1. I want everybody to understand. All of us know what Choice Neighborhoods is, but we've got a lot of people watching. We're talking about phase 1 now, and if you'll please introduce this.
Yes, sir. Again, Marla Newman, Community Development Director. And I'm coming to you with a request to essentially move dollars that have been previously allocated for phase 2 of the Choice Neighborhoods initiative to phase 1. A little background: in April, and as required for submission of an initial tax credit application, we partnered with McCormick Barron Salazar, the developer, for the new Cleveland Avenue home site, along with HAWS, the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem, to look at how we might fill a gap that was existing in the phase 2 development. That gap had to be sufficiently covered or completely covered as a condition of submitting the tax credit application to the State Housing Finance Agency that was due in May. As part of that, we assembled a variety of sources of income to cover the gap between home funds. We also obligated some economic development funds, and then we also obligated some ARPA funding. Since that time, the budget has increased, the costs have increased for Phase 1, which is at the former Brown Elementary School site. That particular phase is on the cusp for loan closing. However, because of rising costs, a gap again grew, and now we're being asked to just shift $600,000 that were approved for Phase 2 to just shift them into Phase 1, I apologize, so that that gap could be closed and the developer can actually get to the loan closing table with its tax credit investors in September. So we're staring down a September closing date, and shortly after that is when we're hoping then to break ground to actually start vertical construction. Right now, site preparation is going on at the former Brown Elementary School site. Demolition should be underway any moment now. So all of the foundational work, if you will, is being put in place to prepare for vertical construction. We're just needing now to address the gap that has again appeared because of rising construction cost. Here today to give some more detail about the situation, we have, of course, Kevin Cheshire, who is the Executive Director of HAWS, and then we also have Sandra Seals, who is with McCormick, Barron, Salazar, and I can answer what questions I can, and then I can turn the mic over to either of them to come forward and give further explanation.
Let me just comment, I've said this several times. There's a committee meeting this date next week, this Monday next week, to try to come up with a comprehensive plan on how to close this huge gap. But for Phase 1, I don't think we have any other options at this time other than to move money forward. Now, that's kicking the can down the road. I don't like to do that. But we are meeting next week to try to figure out how to stop kicking the can. So I support this, and I think we need to do it promptly because the time is running out. We have 20 days left in the month.
No choice.
Unless there's arguments otherwise, I can't have a motion.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we approve item G3.
Second.
Motion second. Kevin, it's not, we don't want to hear from you. It's
Yeah.
just, I got two big items that we haven't got to yet.
McCormick Barron.
Thank you very much. That is approved.
Thank you.
We will now go to G4.
G4, resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned land by private sale to Pace of the Triad.
Mr. Millett, if you'll introduce this, who we're selling, what we're selling.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and members of council.
Good afternoon.
This item is really a combination of a refresher from the June Finance Committee meeting when it was presented as an information item, and I believe it was item C4 on the consent agenda that was discussed about property at Motor Road in Old Walkertown Road. So, as was noted earlier, the city did reacquire an 18-acre parcel at Motor Road and Old Walkertown Road. Combined with the property already owned by the city, we now have a 31-acre at that intersection that does include and surround, it does not include, but it surrounds the Dollar General property that is there on the corner.
Can I get the City Secretary, can you put that map up? The aerial one, so everybody knows what we're talking about. And this was the same piece of land we talked about in.
Correct.
Hang on a minute. There we go. If you could move it up just a little bit. You see a little cutout at the bottom, that's the land that was sold for the Dollar General, I believe.
That's correct, yes,
All
sir.
right, please continue.
So the city did retain an architect to design a site development plan, a conceptual plan for the development of that remaining acreage. Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, or PACE, is a nonprofit health and human services agency that provides community-based services to individuals 55 and over who need medical care and support to continue living at home. Services provided include physician and nursing services, physical, occupational, and speech therapies, personal care, activities and exercise, nutritional counseling, and social work support. PACE is interested in expanding into the Winston-Salem market and has made an offer to purchase 5 acres at the Motor Road site to construct a new facility. City staff have been negotiating sales terms, and an earnest money deposit of $10,000 has been received. Staff recommends the following: a sales price of $100,000 for approximately 5 acres, that's $20,000 per acre. The city will cooperate with PACE for access to water and sewer, a due diligence period of 120 days to begin at the effective date of the sales agreement. Deed restrictions will state that the property must be used for public purposes and that if PACE fails to begin construction on the facility within 2 years, the property will revert to the city. If PACE has the property rezoned and fails to purchase the property in accordance with the sales agreement, they will be responsible for returning the property to its prior zoning status. This sale is authorized by North Carolina General Statute 160A-279, which sets forth the procedures for selling certain city-owned land to nonprofit entities carrying out a public purpose. The site being sold to PACE will be incorporated into the conceptual development plan of the 31-acre parcel. Staff also recommend that the proceeds from the sale be deposited in the Economic Development Project Fund for infrastructure development to serve the Motor Road site. Ms. Ursula Robinson, who you did meet at the June meeting when she spoke in support of it, is here. She's the executive director of PACE, and will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. McIntosh.
What does cooperate with access to water and sewer mean?
That is general language referencing the need for a water line to be extended to serve the site. It essentially fronts the Motor Road side of the Dollar General site, but will need to be extended. So related to the consent item C4, and these dollars designated for infrastructure development, we are talking about partnering with PACE for the extension of that water line.
We would pay for the installation.
We would pay for at least a portion of the installation, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Mundy.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. They would be required to return the land to its previous condition, but would they also forfeit that earnest money?
If it is beyond the due diligence period, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I actually met earlier on this, and I asked they put that 2 years in. I don't want somebody to tie this up. This is a very nice piece of land. It's 31 acres. They're taking 5, and we didn't want to. We're giving them a low market price, I believe.
Yes, sir.
That we give them a good deal, only put the water pipe in, and then nothing happens. So we just want to be sure that they move along. Can I get a motion?
I have a comment.
Oh, comment.
Mr. Millett, again, how long ago was it, 2016, 17, when we worked with the church to get the land? When was that?
I believe it started even before 2016.
Might have been 2011 or 12.
I think it was probably 2012 or so when that began.
Correct. And what I've always asked staff to do moving forward, when we saw that nonprofits would be selected to participate in grants or whatever with the city when it comes to land and them building, economic development, community development, whatever, and if they don't have a timeline in there, we got the clawbacks that they got to give us our land back and any other monies that they were given from the city of Winston-Salem. So I appreciate that, because when we started to see, Councilmember Clark, you remember there were numbers of them, and they were just sitting on the money, and nothing was happening. So I commend your staff and the staff of the city for us moving forward to ensure that these programs and collaborations are expedient. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And this is a well-known company, I think in Greensboro now, and we are very optimistic everything will take place.
I think.
Ms. Burke, this is your ward, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair Clark. Thank you, Mr. Millett, for that presentation. Again, we heard from Ms. Ursula Robinson, the Director of PACE, in June, and we are very excited about PACE coming to Old Walkertown and Motor Road, and we're excited about the 5 acres. Thank you, Chair Clark, for having that conversation about the 2-year clause. I think that this relationship that you asked about, Mayor Pro Tem, with the church started in 2013. But this is the beginning of developing the 31 acres, so we're excited about PACE, so thank you.
Can I get a motion from a committee member?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Everybody please vote when it comes up. That is approved. Thank you. We will now go to G5.
G5, consideration of items related to a 3-year funding commitment to Winston Starts.
Mr. Rao, will you please present this?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Clark. So earlier this summer, officials with Winston Starts approached the mayor and city management about the city providing assistance to Winston Starts to continue their operation. I'm not going to give a whole lot of background. Steve Lineberger, who's a past official with Winston Starts, is here. I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about what Winston Starts is about, but just to present their ask to the committee, what they are looking for is a 3-year commitment from the city of $50,000 a year, so that would be a total commitment of $150,000. This would go towards sustaining, their operation. They currently have 3 full-time equivalent staff, and this would continue, enable them to continue providing the facilities, the mentoring programs that they provide to startups. The funds for this assistance would come out of the Economic Development Project Fund reserves. So that would be the plan for providing for this commitment. But at this time, I'll recognize Mr. Lineberger.
Steve, if you could please give your name and address for the record.
Yeah, thank you. Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. I'm Steve Lineberger, and 2800 Country Club Road, and City Council. Delighted to be here and grateful to be here for this request. I did not prepare remarks, but I'll just tell you a little bit about the mission of Winston Starts. We were created as a nonprofit to help become the best startup city in the Southeast. To create the next wave of startups, the next wave of entrepreneurship that would create the next Haynes, the next Reynolds, now the next Inmar, the next Javara. We have proven the concept. We opened doors in February of 2018. We measure our success on the basis of the capital attracted by the companies of Winston Starts, the number of companies that come through, the number of companies that are there, the annual revenue, and the job creation. Right now, the job creation is north of 300, roughly $45 million in capital invested in Winston Starts companies. Importantly, as we looked, before we opened doors, as we looked at different communities, we traveled to Nashville, Atlanta, Richmond, Washington, D.C., New York, Birmingham, and we realized that what we needed as a city was not another accelerator. The city had a couple of 12-week boot camp accelerators that were doing a fine job. Where we saw the gap and where other cities see the gap is what happens then. When these companies graduate from an accelerator, they've experienced some level of market success, and they don't know what the next step looks like. So we created Winston Starts as the next step for these companies that graduate from accelerators and or have some level of market validation and just need to know what to do to scale up and make this company a regional, national, or global company. So that's why we're there. Just a little bit about the mission. As I said, we're a nonprofit. We've been funded primarily by 2 individuals. To keep growing, we need to diversify our funding base. That's the bottom line.
And you're on the 4th and 5th floors of, I call it the Inagon Building. It's
Yeah.
got a new name now.
4th and 5th floors, approximately 35,000 square feet.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure you know what my comment or question is going to be next. After studying your presentation of your team, I saw women, I saw men, but I didn't really see anybody that looked like me, and I didn't see anybody that was brown either. So my concern, and even listing all the people and institutions you're connected with, you did have a byline in there that universities and colleges were exempted for whatever reason at the bottom, but they're in it. As a person that grew up here, born and raised here, I've been on this council 13 years. There's nobody in this room or city won't tell you that I am intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I must say, your presentation is great. But when someone like me looks at it from a corporate background, I would be somewhat disappointed. So you got to figure out for me, Mr. Chair, Council Committee, I got to see where the black and brown and poor folks are coming from. I'm connected to the Center for Creative Economy. They helped me have my first charrette when I got elected in 2010, right there where the Weaver plant is. So I know about you. I support them. But as I've told them, and they understand, anybody that's coming now for taxpayer dollars, just like the council members were talking about the money for housing, we cannot continue to grow our economy without houses, and we cannot do houses without you, but we can't do anything unless we're collaboratively working together to show the diversity of my community. So you don't have to do it now, but I'm going to be asking if the council supports this or this committee. Right now I can't, because I need more data and information on, and I got to make a few phone calls to people that I know to tell them, great concept, great idea, but where are the black and brown and poor people at? Thank you so much.
Would you like to comment? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, first of all, on our staff, you're right. There's four total staff. They're all white. If you look at our mentor base, we have people of color in our mentor base, and our mentor pool is quite strong. We couldn't do this and scale this without a pool of 80+ mentors, and we have a diverse mentor base, and we have a diverse founder base in our group. We are 2.5 times the national average as far as women and minority admissions. I can give you a lot of reasons for that, but that'll take up a lot of time. But we have diversity in our founder base. We have diversity in our mentor base. So while you don't see it in our 4-person staff, we do have it on our board too. We have diversity on our board too. We have Trinity Manning is on our board, and Natalie Jensen-Knowles. So we have female and African American on our board.
One more comment.
Just go ahead.
Usually when people come to us for money, we ask for the demographics of whether it's a corporation, a business, or anyone. Nonprofits, they have to present that to us. So in your presentation, and maybe I missed it, the diversity of like your board, that's usually a requirement now when you're asking for monies from governments and things like that. So again, I would look for you, and you can get with staff, between now and Monday. I need to see who these people are, because I see where the Black Chamber is part of your partners. I read all of that. Again, I think you're probably doing a great job, but I have to answer to my constituents and the people of Winston-Salem. I can't just talk it. I got to walk it.
Understood.
Okay?
Understood.
Thank you.
If we could get some more information, anything the committee does will go to the full board, which meets this time next week or later this next week. Any other?
Just a quick comment about how strong I think our ecosystem is in the, not necessarily startup, but in the entrepreneurial arena with Winston's Arts and Flywheel and Center for Creative Economy. And there's just a lot of energy around there, and I think most people really don't have a clue about what's going on and the level of activity and the buzz and the startup community, if I can call it that, they understand it, but I think people within the greater city don't realize how strong a game we're playing.
Ms. Scipio, we've got you for a comment, and I hope we can connect it through.
Yes.
We can hear you good. Okay.
Great. Yes, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Adams. I think Winston-Star does a phenomenal job in what it has done since its inception. But I think there needs to be some very, very intentional efforts to actually bring African-American businesses into the game. Knowledge is power, and oftentimes people don't know what's available. Although I think you're connected with the Black Chamber, I think there needs to be a stronger partnership with them to make sure some of their members and all of the ones who want ideas to move them forward are part of knowing how to get to Winston-Star. So I do concur that we really need to be more intentional about building African-American businesses in this community. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
If you'll work with Mr. Rao for some information for Monday night, can I get a comment motion from someone on the committee?
This is an information item.
Oh, just information, excuse me. Hang on a minute.
This is an action item.
This is just,
Action item, it's resolution approving a three.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was on the wrong
this
one.
is an action item. Do we
I
have
skipped
any
ahead.
action?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second? I'll move second. We have a motion and a second. Everybody please vote when it comes up. Again, it's 2 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstaining. And again, this will go to the council, which meets next Monday at 7 o'clock, same room. You're all invited back. We will now move to the next item.
G6, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a change order to the Old Salem Infrastructure Improvements Contract with Remy, Inc. for the installation of decorative Pea-Sized gravel chip seal on existing streets within Old Salem.
By the way, we have 2 more items. The last one is the land for the art-based school. I'm going to try to get both of these covered, and Mr. Taylor, I may take a little bit of your time.
We'll be
but
patient.
not much. We will now go to G6, which is the Old Salem. You got the floor. Tell us about it.
Thank you, Chairman Clark, Madam Vice Chair, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee and council. My name is Jeff Fanzer, Deputy Director of the Department of Transportation. The item before you really is to authorize the city manager to execute a change order for really the last piece of the Old Salem Infrastructure Improvement Project. As you all are well aware, we've recently completed a multi-million-dollar infrastructure improvement project within the historic district. The item, it talks about all the elements. One thing that was omitted from the scope for a number of reasons was the decorative chip seal, what we call that, the matte coat that goes on top to allow for the historical significance of the street once the project has been completed. Now that the project has been completed, it is time to do that. So this item essentially just authorizes the city manager to execute a change order with the contractor for this work. I will say in the item, it also talks about it's advantageous to do a change order given the historical significance of the district and the relationship we've had for a number of years now with the contractor and their familiarity with the district. And that's why we are going this route. So that's the item before you. I'm happy to take any questions or concerns.
Questions, comments? Ms. Adams?
Yes, the chip seal, why we didn't get a picture of that?
So that's a good question, and we'll be sure to make sure that you do get something that shows that. So basically, we've been working throughout the project with the Historical Resource Commissions to talk about the color, fit, and finish that would look like. And so that is something that we would be closely coordinating with the Historical Resources Commissions. But I'm happy to share with you what that could look like.
So we basically did some road work, am I right?
That's correct.
And now we're coming back and we're gonna put a decorative seal on the work we already did. Right?
For lack of a better way to put it, yes.
Yeah. See, I like to communicate so the people out in the city that's watching, that they get it, that we need for them to understand what's going on. My question to you is, how vulnerable is this seal once you put it on there? To the pedestrians and whatever else is going on, cars?
So Mayor Pro Tem Adams, that's an excellent question, and I will say that there is no secret that this type of treatment is more of a maintenance burden, and so that's something that we should identify and understand, that what's being proposed is not hot mix asphalt that you can run a snow plow down pretty easily. This is something that will require a specific application and then also specific maintenance efforts for our staff. So that's a good comment, and that's something that we'll have to address in perpetuity.
Mr. McIntosh.
Could I possibly get Michelle McCullough to come up, and I wanted to ask her a question about ideas about alternative ways to satisfy the requirement? And maybe a little bit of history around the requirement for the folks at home.
Hi, Committee Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, Council members, committee members. Michelle McCullough, Historic Resource Officer. So I am here. Want to ask me a specific question, or you don't want me to ramble?
I don't want you to ramble. I guess most importantly is, have we looked into and can we get some information on what alternative compliance would look like on this? $600,000 is a lot of money for.
Right. So let me start off by saying Old Salem is a historic district. Actually, its zoning is H, so everything's regulated in there. All changes have to go through the Historic Resource Commission, and they have a set of standards. The standards say that asphalt and concrete are not permitted. So that's where we start. But it does not require that we use this, whatever he called it, we call it pea gravel finish or whatever. There may be some other options out there. I recently was doing some investigation because when Councilperson Larson was at Old Salem, we had done some test spots for different products, and the pea gravel was one of them. Recently, in 2021, Williamsburg, which is kind of our icon that we go to for this, there was a big article and a big uproar because they went to blacktop because they had been doing some testings and it didn't last, and it was a maintenance hazard and all of that such. So I think since it doesn't require a specific material, it just says it's not permitted, and it can still go if we can prove, we need to do this because it's not working, it's not lasting, and that sort of thing. It just would have to go before the Historic Resource Commission. So I do think we could do a little more research on it, is what I'm saying.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Is there a time limitation here?
Not on our books. No. Well, no, because here's what happened is when they did the big project, they got a certificate of appropriateness for the project, and they kept that renewed. All of Old Salem was not pea graveled. We had different spots. So what they did is they took it back. They have to bring back an appropriate material so we can work with them on time. So there's no deadline of we have to do this within a year.
I talked with some folks before the meeting tonight, and I think we all had questions on, will it last? What do you do when it snows? What do you do if you got to cut the road and fix a pipe?
Right.
How do you put it back? Because I know over the years, and I've lived in this town for, I think, 40 years or something, a number of different road surfaces have gone in at Old Salem, and none of them worked.
And that's one of the things I'd like to investigate more. I'd actually like to talk to the people who did the work in Williamsburg and tried the test. What did they try? Because we don't want to use something we know that's not going to work.
And let me say something else too. Every building in there's got electricity, and they didn't have that.
They do?
They didn't have that in 1775 or whenever they built it. And if we have to live with asphalt roads, and let me tell everybody, these are brand new asphalt roads.
And we will have to do, I think Mr. Fansler can say, there will still have to be some sort of finish because they've kind of left
They always leave off
a
the
divot,
last.
right, to finish it off. But if we could get a little more time on this one, we may be able to do some research and find something that might not be as expensive, but might also be more congruous with the district and look a little more historic, but not blacktop.
And I'm looking for somebody who's used it before that can honestly tell us it lasts.
Yeah, the
Right.
integrity of it.
And I think that's fair
Yeah,
to do.
because that was probably 20 years ago they tried something, and it was a disaster from what I remember.
It didn't work. And again, we did some test runs of one thing, and it kind of worked, but we don't know how it's going to do on a big scale. And maintenance is an issue. And I realize I've been told, Mr. Huff has told me, everybody. So we'd like to find a solution that maybe we can be a forerunner and find something.
Any suggestions that you come back with, can we see maintenance costs associated with the options?
Okay, Mr. Larson, this is your award. Would you like to comment?
Yes, let me just comment a little bit on this. 57 years ago, the city established an H district and set up standards which differentiated it from the other residential areas in the city. And one of the most distinctive characteristics, of course, was brick sidewalks, special lighting fixtures, and of course, a different kind of street material, copying Williamsburg's pattern. The first application lasted well up to the 1970s when I arrived. A second application we found out was the wrong types of binder and wrong kinds of stone. There was a catalytic reaction between the stone and the binder, which caused it to fail. And we went to advise some stone experts, and we figured out what that problem was. Basically, the quarry people helped us understand that. We've run some tests on Academy Street, which is the most heavily traveled street in Salem, with fairly good results. I think it was held up fairly well on Academy. The problem was that the idea of redoing the stonework was the first item in, and now it's the last item out of the whole project of trying to deal with Old Salem's infrastructure, which hasn't been seriously addressed since 1950. And the reason that it was the first item in was because the streets had gotten so torn up over the years of being patched and repaired that, of course, the patching the gravel, and that patch never worked as well as the original application. So the idea was to do a comprehensive repaving of the streets. The gravel goes down better on a smooth, new asphalt surface, which is what we have now to work with, and as compared to going onto an old patched-in or previously worn surface. So part of the justification for the new surface that is down there now, if you drive down there, is that it's a nice, clean palette to work on the gravel. I'm personally fine to study it some more. I mean, we've studied it before. But I think it's important that everybody realize that Old Salem's a unique place, and part of what its uniqueness is the architecture, landscape gardens, and everything set it apart from any other place in this whole state or in the country, really. And we need to protect that because it's always been a major defining element of this city. Its unique architectural character, and it needs to be protected and preserved. So we can defer if the committee wants to, but I would like to put a deadline on this and see something coming back, certainly within a month or two, to see if we can't figure out something, because we've studied this thing. Well, we've studied it for 5 years. We were working on this when I first came on to council,
Right.
and I don't know that we've made any other progress on it. And I think we need to either go back with what we've got with the improvements that we know that we've made over the years, or we need to come up with an alternative material.
Okay, thank you. Measure twice, pave once. So let's come back to us. Thank you. We'll hold that in committee. We have one more item, which is G7. If the clerk will please read that.
G7, information on request to sell city-owned land to the arts-based school.
Mr. Rowell, if you would please introduce this.
Thank you, Chairman Clark. The Arts-Based School was founded over 20 years ago as a public charter school and currently serves over 500 students in grades K through 8. In recent years, the school has seen its wait list grow to between 400 to 500 students. And to meet this demand, the school leadership has met with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and the school board recently approved a lease agreement with them to use about 14,000 square feet of the former Diggs Elementary School, which is located in the Happy Hill area, to start a second elementary school. And their plan is to open a new school in August this month with grades K through 1. The school leadership is interested in expanding that campus eventually to include a middle school. And so Councilmember Scipio has been working with them on possibilities for identifying land for this type of expansion. They have looked at land that is, I guess, immediately west of Diggs Elementary School. It's city-owned land, about 9 acres. In fact, Sandy, can we pull up the map of that?
There's a map in the presentation that's got the orange and the yellow on it too, if we can pull that one up. There we go. Continue, please.
The other map. Right there. There you go. You had it. Up. Just had to scroll down a little.
Everybody remember that?
So there you go. This particular map shows the owners of the property that are in the Happy Hill area, what used to be the Hope 6 area, because there's a number of vacant parcels up there. But you can see there the shape, the parcel there outlined in orange. It says parcel of interest. This is the parcel that's immediately west of Diggs Elementary. It's a flat piece of land that the city owns. Like I said, approximately 9 acres. So there's interest in the city potentially donating that land to the arts-based school. What we know is that through general statute, the city cannot donate the land to a nonprofit organization, but they can sell the land to a nonprofit if the use serves a public purpose. And in this case, education services would be a public purpose. But the city could sell the land at a nominal price, perhaps $1. One point to note about this particular parcel: this parcel has been identified by council as a parcel that could be developed for affordable housing. So that is something that has been presented to you all previously. So that's there for your consideration. This is an information item at this point. If the Finance Committee directs staff to continue discussions with the arts-based school, then we'll be prepared to bring back a council action for consideration and potential approval, perhaps in September. Robin Hollis, who is the principal of the arts-based school, I believe is here, and she is available to answer any questions you have about their vision for this. As a public charter school, they receive money from the state for operations, but they do not receive money for capital needs, and so they have to raise those funds. So, Ms. Hollis.
Ms. Scipio, this is your ward. Would you like to comment? If you can unmute. I did get your email, but since you're here, I won't read it. You can, but you're muted. There
Okay.
You go. Gotcha.
Thank you so much, Chairman Clark. This is a wonderful opportunity for the Happy Hill community, as well as our city. Many of you do not know, maybe some of you do know, that to desegregate the Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools in the African-American neighborhoods were closed. 14th Street Elementary and Mebane Elementary were demolished. Skyland Elementary, Brown Elementary, and Anderson Junior Senior High School were sold. Diggs Elementary eventually was closed as a school. Our children were bused and have been bused for the last 50 years out of their neighborhoods. Although Forsyth County has jurisdiction over our schools, it is critically important that the city of Winston-Salem demonstrate its commitment to quality education for all youth in this city. To this end, having a quality education program like that, which is offered by the arts-based school in the Happy Hill neighborhood, and Happy Hill is the oldest African-American community in the city. It makes a strong statement about the power of education and that the city of Winston-Salem is truly committed to the education of our children, all of them. So I strongly am in favor of this sale.
Thank you, ma'am. This is information only. Any other comments? Ms. Adams.
I was just going to say that, again, Councilmember Scipio, I understand your passion for arts and education in East Winston and in that area. I was born right down the street under that railroad trestle in 1954 on southbound. But this school, like when they promised the people in Boston neighborhood, the Paisley folk, that the school was going to open a lottery for the children in the community. And what happened is it basically didn't work out that way. Most of the kids that go to Paisley don't look like me and they don't have a color to them. I would be interested to see the demographics and diversity of the arts-based school. But when I see the language to meet the growing demand, and then it says the school would establish enrollment through a lottery system in which students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch will be given greater weight for the community they plan to selection process. Again, more work is needed on this, but my priority is housing. Schools, like they tell us, Councilmember McIntosh, that's the county. So I'm throwing it back at them. Housing is our deal. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is a battle of visions and missions. Our stated and restated mission is housing, and council has come together on that over and over again. So I don't have any problem with the mission of arts-based school. The only way I would probably consider this seriously is if the county came back and said, we've got 9 level acres available to you in another location to build housing on, because this is a prime site. It's not the only site, but it's a prime site. I would trade like for like. But I do want to mention also, we have a very vibrant downtown, and one of the biggest reasons we have a vibrant downtown is that more people are living there. Happy Hills is, by and large, vacant ground. I think we need to stimulate housing production in that area to bring a community back. Right now, it's vacant lots. So the more housing we can bring into there, I think the better it is for everybody involved.
Thank you. To the arts-based folks, this is just for information. So if you put together some information, maybe how the current ones, you select folks and this, that, and the other would be very helpful. I'll just offer my 2 cents. I don't have any trouble putting a school there. I was the one that asked Ben to put these yellow and orange marks on here. Folks, you drive over here, it's empty. It's vacant land. There's plenty of places to build houses or schools for that matter. But if you look at it, and I know we still have the housing authority here, I guarantee you he'll cut us a deal if we want to put some houses over on those yellow lots. There's plenty of places we can do housing here, but as Mr. McIntosh just said, it has set fallow for years and years and years. The housing authority did put in some senior housing. It's I think it's a 3-story building there. Matter of fact, they had a fire there right after they built it, and they had to work on it a little bit.
Alders Point.
Yeah. Somebody just gave me the name. August Point?
Alders.
Alders Point.
Alders Point.
So that was built in a few other little things, but there's plenty of room here for housing. I don't know if a school would work in other places, but I don't buy the argument housing first. Well, good gracious, guys, we got plenty of places to put any type of housing you want in Happy Hills. For some reason, we haven't. And I don't know what that is, but it has been vacant and available for 15 years, Kevin, give or take. All righty, with that, that's just information. I do like Ms. Adams' comments, if y'all could get back with us, and if you'll just coordinate that through, I guess, Mr. Rao. With that, we are finished. Mr. Taylor, when you want to start your committee?
We'll take a 10-minute recess.
10-minute recess, so it's 7:25, public safety.
Not 7:25.
We're adjourned.
25.
25.
7:20.